the net here. Well, good morning everybody, and a special greeting to all in Fiji, where it is their Fiji national holiday today, and a day for celebration their independence. So that was the Fiji national anthem, and this is Gulf Harbour Radio, Patricia and David, ZMH 286 on today, Wednesday, the 10th of October. A little bit early because, again, we've got lots of weather stuff to get into, which is the main purpose of this morning net, of course. So we can't do that any injustice. And there are a lot of people wanting to move one way or the other, some down here, some to Australia. So we will certainly cover that. And we have got quite a bit of news for people who will just sit there and enjoy the tropics a bit more, or the subtropics anyway. I wouldn't exactly say it's tropical here, 14 degrees, and yes, I will admit I waited to give you the 14 degrees so that I would be honest. It was a little lower, 1018.7 steady on the bar, about 9 knots from the north-northwest. About 50% cloud cover, but the sun around, shadows around, so that's not too bad. Yesterday was another glorious day. Went for another walk along the water. Just while we're talking about conditions, I will tell you, got a report from Jeffrey at South Minerva. I can see why we have not taken Chameleon to South Minerva. He said it's a 10-metre wide opening on the west side with a 2-metre depth at mid-tide and a ferocious current, so pretty sporty, but a wonderful land of live coral and fish and astonishingly clear water. Currently, the two boats there have got north wind at about 5 knots and 10% cloud cover. The sea is breaking on the reef, about 1 metre sea, so there's a light roll at mid to high tide there. The barometer there is a steady 1017. And for those interested in Katanga, he's unfortunately going to hit the front when he arrives. He's currently at 2922, 174, and he's got about, it just started to lighten the breeze. It was northeast, and now it's about southeast, about 6 knots. So he's unfortunately going to get some rather strong winds when he arrives in the country. It'll be something for him to work on. All right, David is, of course, going to cover a lot of weather. Those of you who are interested in the rather sporty passage coming up to New Zealand and also to Oz. But let's go on to a little bit of news first and foremost. It's a bit of a scrabble, actually, to get news at the moment. The hurricane, of course, Michael, will hit Florida and Alabama overnight tomorrow morning. The winds will be quite strong. It will be a Category 3 hurricane then, 111 miles per hour. Certainly wouldn't want those if you're on passage, but you're a long way away from Alabama and Florida. On the east coast of New Zealand at the moment, the NIWA ship Tangaroa is currently dropping a couple of arrays of sensors, not on the surface, don't worry about them, they're on the seabed to get an early warning for earthquakes, because they are a little bit worried about what's going on there with earthquakes and the potential for tsunamis. So they're laying these there's various scientists on board from Scripps in the US and a place in Japan and the New Zealand NIWA folk and so on, and they're laying those down. A good place to put them. Where were we in the Cook's Canton, I think it was. They had a computer to do exactly the same thing, but unfortunately they had explained that the computer had a CD drive in it, so the guy that was looking after it took it home each night to play videos on it. So having these sensors in the bottom of the ocean is probably a lot more reliable way of getting the information when it's needed. Going to Turkey now, they're getting very irate, as is the United States actually, about the Saudi dissident journalist who went into the consulate almost a week ago now in Istanbul to get marriage documents, and he never came out. They have evidence of a Saudi hit squad flying in. This is like this stuff in movies, isn't it, and books. This hit squad flew in, evidently, and since then the man has not been seen again. It's not really kosher to go and eliminate somebody in another country, so it's causing a bit of tension, certainly between Turkey, who was a friend of this fellow. The president was a friend of this dissident journalist. So Turkey and Saudi are not on speaking terms at the moment, and even it's causing the US a bit of stress because the journalist was actually now resident in the United States. There's going on to the forever increasingly boring subject of climate change. There is a lot of hot air, if you'll excuse the pun, as there is a conference on the subject somewhere or another. I haven't taken much notice. There's always conferences somewhere. They're now deciding that the planet only has until 2030. I don't know what's going to happen to us all, but they've decided that 2030 is the magic date, and if we haven't stopped climate change by then, well, we're all in deep doo-doo as a species. This, of course, yesterday it was hilarious on one of the programs, ZB here, for those Kiwis that know it. Leighton Smith went through about the last 40 or 50 years.
4 decades.
Four decades of these conferences and the proclamations that came out that said, we've only got 10 years. Well, this was 40 years ago.
They said that 4 times.
Yeah, they've said it about 4 times. So it's all getting very boring that we've only got 10 years when this has been going on since the 70s. But anyway, I just thought I'd let you know that you've only got till 2030, and you can't then blame me for not giving you a forewarning. All right, outbreak of typhus, believe it or not, in Los Angeles. It's spread by fleas, and there's 57 people who now have typhus. It's amazing, isn't it, how these things raise their heads every now and again. So that's what's happening there. Not a lot of other stuff to tell you. Those that know Terry and Tove on Surrey, they are now in that North Pacific garbage patch that I think Bright Angel commented on. Surrey reckons you could almost play hopscotch over the junk that they're going through at the moment. They're at 39 North and 14643 West. In that little area of North Pacific garbage. All right, that's about it from me here in terms of news. As I say, there's sort of bits and pieces of news in New Zealand. They're talking about, or in Auckland, they're talking about a rail system to the airport. That's a little bit like climate change. We've been talking about that for an awful long time. you know, when they're spending billions, as this one is, 1.5, they sort of do an awful lot of talking and not a lot of action. But anyway, no news yet on streaming. Good morning to anybody on streaming. I hope that it's going through all right. And just looking at emails, nothing much there either. So I'll just throw it open to see if there's anybody with anything in particular that you might want to talk about before we start yakking about weather. Sika, good morning, and tell me where you are. Over. Okay, and what are your current conditions? Because we have people interested in going the opposite direction. Over.
Okay, I'll give you a little warning. I did yesterday because I've got a good copy on it. Yeah, we've got an easterly wind, very light, 4 miles an hour. And just some scattered, maybe 10% cloud cover, light puffy friendly clouds, and very calm seas. And all is well. It's been a nice passage so far for light conditions.
Yeah, we prefer it that way too. So Sika has got very light conditions, roughly easterly 4 to 5, calm seas and scattered to 10%, and they're at 2-3 south and 1-6-2 east, give or take. So sounds very pleasant. Dave's just looking ahead, and yeah, it looks like you're going to continue to have it pretty decent. Over.
Yes, that's great. I think we'll probably arrive today. Hopefully, we may put a little more speed into it and try to get in before dark tomorrow. Over.
Yep. Okay.
I wouldn't pass up the spots in between.
David said he wouldn't pass the spots in between. You might want to, once you get into the lagoon, just hang about and then go in the next day to check out.
Going on Monday.
The boats that are there seem to be doing nothing but fix engines at the moment. Erie 2 and Villamie are busy down below, not using the beautiful weather. But there are a couple of boats up there in the Loyalties that are enjoying good weather. Certainly, looking at the satellite picture as I am at the moment, New Caledonia is absolutely the best in the South Pacific today. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the southern part of Vanuatu is not too bad either. So, yep, you're going in to the right spot. Over.
Well, that sounds good. That sounds good. It's been a great passage. We had lots and lots of contacts the first couple days out of Australia. And a couple of days ago, we encountered dozens of pilot whales along with dolphins in a big feeding company. Had a movie hitchhiked for a day. And we have not been interested in fish hours. Over.
Well, with all those whales about, that must have been quite spectacular, seeing that many whales. Haven't had any reports from Newcal on whale sightings recently. There were a lot of sightings earlier in the season, but none recently. So, well, we know where they are now. All right, well, you better avoid them. Yes, the trouble with seeing all those sorts of things in the water, it means you don't see too many fish. All right, we'll clear with Sika. Is there anybody else? Wow, conditions are really good radio-wise today. Graham, go ahead. Over.
Good morning, David. Yeah, you're moving in here. We're still right up on the corner here. We've got about 115,000 cover, and we've had rain off and on all night. And now he's doing 3, maybe 5, 6 months.
Okay, northern New South Wales, 100% cloud cover. Rain on and off all night with a southeasterly 5 to 6. I shouldn't laugh, but you really do want the rain. And I know Shanu was pretty keen on getting
he
rain
asked for the
too.
rain.
Yeah,
He asked
he
for
did
the rain.
ask for the rain, yes. He did ask for the rain, folks. You know who asked for the rain. All these folk in the Asawas, they did plead for rain, so now they've got it. All right, thank you for that, Graham. Over. Boy, you're faded away again. Your batteries must be down because it was good at the start and now I'm not copying you much at all. So I think you were talking something about the weekend, but I couldn't pick that one up. All right, I'll just see if there's anybody else. I know it's not very pleasant at Fulanga because I talked to Diego earlier on. Busy spluttering here.
Yeah.
So I'll just think I will just pass the microphone. First, I want to know whether the ETA would be Sunday in Opua. They were looking at leaving on Saturday. I suspect that their work is finished on the boat. So, yes, he's definitely going to be looking at this weekend passage for those that don't mind sporty conditions. So, we will pass the microphone, I think, and I shall have some water. So here's David.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of you folks. People leaving today, tomorrow, the next day, the weekend, Monday. It's all over the place here. Okay, well, good morning, and we'll take a quick gander at the jet stream today. And it's running fairly zonal. In other words, it's running more or less west to east. The axis is about 25 south, 25 south. Now we do have a jet streak entrance just to the south of Fiji and Tonga. Now this is an area where air traveling at roughly 100 to 110 knots all of a sudden accelerates to 150 to 170 knots, and that's what's happening as we speak. This has the effect of causing surface air to rise. And if the conditions are right, clouds are going to form and troughs are created. And taking a look at satellite imagery, that's precisely what is happening over Tonga and Fiji, as we've heard these reports just a few minutes ago. So there's a pretty good lesson in cause and effect. Looking now at the synoptic chart for, we'll call it for lunchtime today, the eastern high is going to be centered near 3.5 and 168 west, out there a bit, and roughly 1025 millibar. Next up is a short wave at 500 millibar, and that continues the development of a surface depression that's in the mid-Tasman, and we'll place it at 40 and 165 east. And it's got about 5 frontal bands. It's amazing, really. 5 frontal bands. That's what I counted this morning, anyhow. By early Thursday, we're going to see multiple low centers out of the system, with the first front, and that's probably going to be a warm front. That'll be early Thursday. It'll be maybe 160 miles west of the North Island, but by midnight, it will have arrived. It will have struck the North Island, and then other fronts will be following right behind them. So most of this action is going to be Thursday into Friday. Now, to the west of this complex depression is a new anticyclone. And by lunch tomorrow, it's going to be pretty close to Tasmania. And it's a strong one. Central pressure estimated to be 1033, 1033. And this high is going to grow, folks. By the weekend, it's going to be mid-Tasman, and I would say about 1037 millibar, but it's going to expand in physical size. And it's going to take up, believe it or not, most of the Southwest Pacific. And I know a lot of you that are ready to head for New Zealand are salivating at the looks of this thing. So as of today, this high remains extremely slow moving, almost stationary. We talked about it yesterday. I was looking at the blocking charts, and not quite officially a block, but it looks like it wants to be. Now by Thursday, the 18th, So that's 8 or so days from now. It's tried to be almost over New Zealand, so you can see how slow it's going. Just about over Tasmania, and in 8 days, it's barely going to be over New Zealand. So that means from Monday, this coming up Monday, until when it is over New Zealand, you are going to have a possible passage out of this. There certainly will be reasonable direction winds, but they will be very strong because the high is quite powerful. But we do have a caveat in all of this. If the upper levels decide to change their minds, there goes the ball game on this. If that doesn't happen, you can probably add about 3 more days to this potential passage, even if the high starts to move a little bit quicker. So that means then the easterlies will start to give way to northerlies on the western edge of the ridge. So from the 18th, we'll jump that up to the 21st. So that's quite a few days of the possibility of getting down to New Zealand in a reasonable fashion, but windy. Now, the winds on Monday, coming up Monday, are going to be fresh to strong over Fiji and Tonga. I think we're going to be looking at 25 knots, east-southeast to southeast, and there'll be higher gusts than that. All favorable wind directions, though, right through Sunday, the 21st. And again, mostly easterly quadrant at that point. So, and as I said earlier, it could extend to Wednesday, the 24th or so. So, I don't know. It's looking pretty good. We will keep you informed. Now, up in the tropics, there is still plenty of action with our trough still over the Solomons, and then it crosses over upper Vanuatu and then onward from there. We have another trough from the Santa Cruz Islands that goes to Fiji, and it splits there. Maybe there's 2 branches is the best way to put it. One over Fiji, the other one over Tonga and Niue. Now, the tropical disturbance that we talked about yesterday is still there, roughly 1213 south and about 172 west. You can see it very clearly on satellite imagery. There are troughs that extend like a wagon wheel from this thing, and they head in different directions. One affects Samoa, another one Tokelau, another one goes out to the northern Cooks, and so on. So over to Tonga now, the imagery, satellite imagery clearly shows a fairly active trough that's affecting Vavau, the Hapais, and Tongatapu all the way up and down the chain. So expect trough conditions with obviously cloud and rain, and I would anticipate this to continue tomorrow. Expect the mean winds east-southeast about 15 to 20 today and tomorrow. The winds are going to pick up on Friday. We're looking at perhaps 20 to 25 knots, mostly easterlies. And then come Saturday, it looks like possibly a shift to the northeast, maybe even the north, 15 to 20 knots. However, a heads up for Tuesday, and it looks like at that point we're going to get a real trade wind surge, and I believe we'll be looking at 25 to 30 knots. And that's coming out of the east-southeast to southeast. And Fiji, of course, is still entertaining that rather persistent trough, rain and thunderstorms for most areas. I believe you've heard the reports from the boats this morning. It's all there. In fact, Fiji Met is continuing with a heavy rain warning for, well, virtually all over the place for the Osawas, especially Tavanui, the Mavanukas, Viti Levu, Vanua Levu, Taveuni. I think I said that. Loma Viti, the Lau, virtually everywhere. Winds are going to be east to southeast, the 15 to 20 knot bracket. So not very strong winds, except if you're under a thunderstorm. So that's going to be today and tomorrow. And hold on to your hats on Monday, because I think the winds, they'll be southeast, but we're going to be looking at 20 to 25 knots and higher gusts for Monday. Now, the trough over Vanuatu is rather weak and broken, as Patricia mentioned. The bulk of it has moved mostly to the east of the group, but it's still around here and there, up and down the chain, mostly to the north. Expect cloudy periods and scattered showers out of this. Winds east to east-southeast, around 15 knots today and tomorrow. Now watch out for Sunday, east, southeast to southeast, 20 to 25 knots, gusts to 30, and all of that is courtesy of the big high that's in the south. New Caledonia, as we mentioned, looks pretty good on imagery. All I can see are scattered clouds for the lagoon area, and of course we've got a report that essentially confirms this as well. So expect light air, east-southeast, 10 to 12 knots. We may see more cloud this afternoon, but it's still looking very good for tomorrow as well. Light air, again, almost variable winds, less than 10 knots, and it could be from various directions. That's what variable means. Now, enjoy the lagoon is about all I can say. It's looking pretty good. Now, Saturday, expect strong winds from the growing high to the south. So I'm thinking we could be looking at 20 to 30 knots, mostly east-southeast. So you've got a couple of days now to enjoy the lagoon and associated areas. Now, what did I forget? Yes, there are boats that are going from New Caledonia to Southport. And looking at Saturday, leaving New Cal, the general area, 15 to 20 knots. Sunday, east to east-southeast, 20 to 30. A lot of wind on Sunday. On Monday, easterlies, 25, gusting 30. And on Tuesday, southeast, about 20. And there are convective areas that are on that passage, and also along the Queensland coast when you get there. So the winds are all in a very good direction, but fairly sporty in terms of the speed. The swell conditions are not that high. I'm looking at some of the frogs for the sea conditions, and they aren't that big at all. So with that wind direction being east-southeast, we're not generating too much from that, and we're not getting swells from the Southern Ocean either. So that's all pretty good news. Anyway, that's the general idea for Wednesday. Those of you that are planning a Friday departure from Fiji or Tonga, I'll cover this in a little bit more detail tomorrow. I can tell you that the wind direction initially is, mostly southeast winds, so it'll be more or less a hard, it won't be a beat. I don't think they'll have a beat. Could be. It depends on what waypoint that you pick, but certainly a close reach. And as I said, the direction for the rest of the trip looks pretty good, starting on Monday for the next 8 or 9 days. But the wind strengths are going to be picking up due to the trade wind surge. So you'll be getting an interesting window if you go. Good direction and lots of wind. So be ready for that. No need to have all the sail up, I would say, for this trip. And that's all I've got for today. Any questions or comments come now, and we'll see what it's looking like tomorrow.
Well, actually, there is a question from Heatwave who are interested to leave tomorrow. If you could just have a quick squint at that to cover that. Heatwave, for those that are interested in why they might be wanting to leave earlier, they are keen to get back home, which is at the top of the South Island, and that's always a difficult thing to do. Most boats will tend to stop at Opua and then wait for the window further south, but with these conditions, it is possible that they would be wanting to look at going right down to Picton, which is one of the approved places to arrive at, unlike Tauranga, where the lady that approves places is actually overseas at the moment. So good time for her to be gone, isn't it, when she actually has work to do. But anyway, that's a different topic. So Heatwave are fairly keen to go tomorrow. And whilst David is just looking at that particular option, a clarification has come in from Flying Fish. Thank you, Jeffrey. I don't know South Minerva because we've only been into North Minerva, but evidently there are two lagoons at South Minerva. The North Lagoon has in fact got good access, and that's where Flying Fish and the other boat are anchored. And in the South Lagoon, it's got limited access, but I presume he's done it in the dinghy, but it's definitely worth exploring with the dinghy. So there you have a bit of clarification on South Minerva. And our good friend Christian actually unfortunately got attacked by a shark at South Minerva, so I suspect they're a little bit more territorial there than they are in North Minerva, where they're a little bit more hospitable to divers. All right, so we're now going to look at the potential for the trip leaving tomorrow, in fact, from Suva tomorrow for Heatwave, and I'll pass the microphone.
Well, that's a deep subject. Looking at the weather, obviously, you've got the troughing conditions today and tomorrow, so assuming that you could care less about that, the winds are going to be, for the first couple of days, pretty much out of the southeast. Looking at Friday, or you're going tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. Looking at Saturday, you'll be down certainly below 20, maybe 22. Quite light air, you might even be motoring, but the winds look like southeast winds. Now, what's going to happen on this trip is that we have a high to the east, and we have the new high that's entering the Tasman. So let's look at Saturday. This is for really everybody's interest. So we've got a big high to the east, we have a big high to the west, and in between we have a depression with a frontal band that goes north. In fact, it goes north all the way up to Fiji and Tonga. This is on Saturday. Actually, it affects Tonga more than it does Fiji. Fiji is almost clear on Saturday. But what that's causing is it's putting sort of a crinkle, if you will, on the isobars of the high that's on the western side, the high that's on the Tasman. And it's going to cause the winds to become a little bit more southerly. If that front wasn't there, and that high to the east would have scooted off a little bit more, we would have had trade winds, fairly nice trade winds, but unfortunately that's not happening. So what that means is along about Sunday, Monday, and if you're, say, down there between 20 and 25 south, by then maybe down to 27 south, you're going to have almost southerly quadrant winds, maybe south-southeast, and they're going to be fairly strong. They're going to be about 20 knots, maybe 25 knots, and that's going to be pretty uncomfortable. And it's all because of that rotten depression that's between the two highs. That's the cause of that. And then as you keep going, you're still have your stomach in one piece, and you're continuing on. Then it gets nice for a while, like Tuesday the 16th, Wednesday the 17th. All the winds that are between 30 south and the islands are almost easterly or east-southeast. That's perfect. But I don't know when it is that you're going to be nearing North Cape to go down the west side of the North Island, because what's happening is the high is still in the Tasman at that point, and the eastern edge of that high is going to be providing southerly quadrant winds. So you're going to be banging your way down to Picton at that point. So this is one of those things where it all depends when and where you're going to be by the middle of next week. So that's the story. Now, you have a good option, of course. You could just pull into Opua and wait until the high starts to move over the country, and then when it starts to move off, then you'll have northerly quadrant. That would be pretty easy to get down to Picton at that point. So that's the story. A little bit too far away to give you anything firm on that, but I could understand wanting to at least get down to New Zealand, somewhere there, so that you can make your break for the Picton area. So that's what we see. I don't know if that's of any help to you, but that's what we're looking at.
And thank you for that, because there are a couple of boats from the deep south. Well, it's not all that deep, is it? But it's certainly down there. Okay, and Obsession, we do have yours to look at, so we'll do that after the net here. And Heatwave have just replied that possibly North Cape in 7 days, so they would be looking at a week from tomorrow, and or week and a day maybe from tomorrow, and then and of course they can stop at Opua, so no problems there. The only problem is that, of course, unless you've got email on board, you will not pick us up, folks, after you've gone below 30 south. Actually, what I should mention is to those folks particularly who are doing this for the first time, on this particular passage you've got lots of options for keeping in touch with folk after you lose us. You do have what we always used to do on Chameleon. We checked in the evening when propagation is good with New Zealand Maritime Radio. It's called Taupo Maritime Radio because that's where the antennas are. We would call Taupo Maritime Radio every evening. We liked using them for two reasons. One is we don't like having to work a schedule, so we could call them at any time because they're there 24 hours a day. And we would call them, give our position, and they're right next to the RCC. They've also got doctors available if you need them for any medical issues on board, and so we use them. The only thing about that is that although it's good to be able to call them any time, you don't hear other boats. If you would like to hear other boats, and that's always interesting, you have got Northland Radio and Far North Radio. Far North is run by Annette, and Northland is run by Peter Mott, and they have skids, regular skids in the evening. You have to be there at the right time, but it does mean that you can hear where other boats are, so that's always useful. And both of those people, or all of those people, in fact, if you get into any problems weather-wise, will give us a call and ask for an update. And of course, if you've got email on board, then that's no problem. You can get in touch with us on ghradio@extra.co.nz. And many of you have got Iridium now, and if we can get back on that, then that's not a problem. We keep it very short. We don't, if you've got sat phones, we don't tell you anything that you don't really need to know or can work out yourself. We keep it very short. All right, is there any other questions for us before we leave you to it? We now have 95% cloud cover out there, so a little bit not so pleasant as it was yesterday. Anybody with anything? Hello, Bill, go ahead. Good signal from you. Where are you? Oh, goodness gracious. Thank you very much. I was sort of taking it off the Yitch report. So the boat is being delivered to Canada. Thank you for that. I think I might have known that, but it slipped my mind. Thanks, Bill. Over. Yeah, it does look pretty solid coming in behind, and you're right, it doesn't look as if it will be a day for doing much topside today, but no varnishing. No, I don't think Bill would be doing that. So yeah, there's a lot coming behind it, Bill. All right, and thank you for that. Brain fart here. Anybody else? Oh, Anahata. So what are you going to do with this possibility for return? Over. Wow, you faded away into the murk too. Bill, did you hear what he said? Over. Yeah, it's working, but it's quite light. I think Ron Pilgrim, are you able to copy that? Over.
Roger Diego helped bring you up and running again, and just the group about 20
Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, it's not as strong as Diego's was when I talked to him before, but it's certainly, we could, with a bit of time, work it out. It's clear enough it just wasn't very strong. So, not too bad for a radio check, but if there's something else you can keep working on, then that would be good too. Good signal from you now, Ron. I forgot where you are, over.
Roger, we're just on Sandy. We are making the move today to head around up over the top, find somewhere there nice and quiet once those reinforcements arrive.
Those reinforcers, yes. Yeah, well, that's the joys of a big high, isn't it, when you're on the outskirts of it? Oh, well, keep the humidity down, keep a good breeze going through the boat, I suppose. All right, yeah, very good signal from you this morning. All right, is there anybody else before we leave you to it? And what are you going to decide on those conditions, Harry, over?
Conditions, wind. I've got 65 miles to run to Havana, and anyone listening from Havana, from Fiji to Newcastle, there is a freighter running on the run line, and directly on the run line is just meters over. So keep a lookout for our boats on the run line. That's me.
Okay, Harry is just saying he's 65 miles from Havana, and I presume Code Blue are not too far from you. Anyone going that direction, there are a couple of freighters on the rum line, so keep a good watch out for them. All right, well, enjoy New Caledonia. I sort of miss being in New Caledonia each year for a few things. I'm not a clothes horse person, but I did like to get a few items of clothing from New Caledonia because all their French clothes arrive with no duty or tax on them, so they are relatively well priced, certainly compared to New Zealand.
And not made in China.
And they're not made in China, so I always used to enjoy that. So anyway, have a good day, everybody. I think that's it from us. A few greetings for Fiji Day on the streaming. Thank you for those. And we'll just make one final call. No, off to the coffee machine. Cheers, everybody. We'll be back again tomorrow with the latest update. Boy, just as well I made David a chocolate cake to keep him going in the daytime. I think he's getting sick of passage weather. We'll have to keep...